dimensional cycle inside it, and seeing how many positive numbers, negative numbers, elementary algebra. Numbers don't have counterparts in dimension 2, and it's a very important role in dimension 4, and that is a number you can associate with a four-dimensional manifold, so why not practice something like getting charts. There's other numbers you can associate, and for a manifold you can look at all the middle homology, what is size of the middle homology, how many 2 cycles there are. Here's the analog of genus, the price of genus. And so in fact, this you could imagine 2 quantity determinant is not the means of electric charge into matter. It describes the number of protons. Matter consists of protons and neutrons. Nuclei consists of protons and neutrons, and the protons charge, neutrons are not. So the number of protons give you the electric charge, the number of neutrons doesn't change the charge, it changes the mass. So you have 2 numbers in physics and 2 numbers in geometry, and my speculation is, perhaps they're related. Well, that takes another century to prove, perhaps 2 days to disprove. End of thought. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be John Morgan. John is currently director of the 2choume Center for Geometry and Physics and also professor of mathematics at Stony Brook University. He spent most of his career at Columbia University, where he was twice department chair. He played a very important role in the verification of Perelman's work from the Poincare conjecture. He and Gang Tian worked very hard to produce a book which was critically refereed and was part of the verification work. So, John?
Thank you very much, Jim. What a great honor and pleasure to be here. I'm not sure it's such a pleasure to follow Sir Michael, who's given us this fantastic tour d'horizon, but nevertheless, here I am. I think of my talk, if Michael's was the prologue, mine is the post-prologue. This is still warming up for the main act, and I guess my job is to tell you what topologists were doing for that 100 years, why they didn't solve the Poincare conjecture, how they tried to attack it, and what they managed to do instead, which in fact they did a lot, they just didn't manage to solve the problem that Poincare had posed. If I can work this. So the story, as far as I'm concerned, starts with Poincare's paper entitled Sur l'analyse physique, which was the name he used for what we now call topology. And I think the purpose of the paper, as he says explicitly, is to put topology on a footing as an independent subject of mathematics. It had been inextricably linked to geometry in the work of Gauss and Riemann, as Sir Michael alluded. And Poincare wanted to set it up as an independent subject. He thought it had a validity in its own right, and it was an important subject to study. He introduced, in this paper and the complements that followed it, he introduced many of the notions that are fundamental to the subject. Poincare duality. Michael talked about the homology of a manifold, which measures the number of holes. Poincare duality says, amazingly enough, the number of holes in one dimension are related to the number of holes in the dual or complementary dimension. That's Poincare duality. He introduced what he calls the torsion coefficients, which are the part of the homology that are of finite order, the torsion in these homology groups. And he asked, his first attempt at the Poincare conjecture was, if a manifold has the homology, that is, the Betty numbers are the same as those of the sphere, and it has no torsion in homology, then is it homeomorphic to the sphere? That was his first attempt at the Poincare conjecture, and he stated it in all dimensions n, motivated by what was true for, in dimension 2, the 2 sphere is the only surface with that trivial homology. The paper that really concerns us today is the 5th and last complement to analysis physique, where Poincare undertook a much more serious and profound study of 3-dimensional manifolds. So he was concentrating now just in dimension 3, and one of the main points of the article was to give a counterexample to his original question about the homology characterizing the sphere. One of the main points of this long article was to construct a manifold, a 3-dimensional manifold, with the homology of the 3-sphere, but which is not homeomorphic to the 3-sphere, and as Michael said, the way he could distinguish this manifold from the 3-sphere was the fundamental group. And later in this talk, I will actually show you Poincare's description of this manifold and how he did the calculations. Now, how did he study 3-dimensional manifolds? Well, he used a technique that we still use today that's been very, very successful. It goes under the name of Morse theory, or a Morse function. So imagine your manifold of any dimension sitting in a higher dimensional space, and start slicing it by codimension 1 linear or affine subspaces, and you'll present this n-dimensional manifold as a family of n-1 dimensional manifolds that vary and undergo certain singularities. If you choose your slicing, the direction of your slicing generically, those singularities will be quite simple. And if I have some chalk, I'll just draw you a picture of the surface. Now you might slice it. And this is a standard way to produce a Morse function. Maybe many of you have seen. Well, let's take a very simple example. We take the 2-sphere, and we simply slice it by horizontal planes. Look at, well, nothing until this value where we get a point. That's a singular space. Then we get a family of increasing circles, decreasing circles, and then the final point, and then nothing. So we present the 2-sphere as an expanding and then contracting family of circles with singularities here and here. Take a slightly more complicated surface, the torus. Again, let's slice it by horizontal planes vertically. This time we'll have 4 singularities. The initial one, the final one, and these 2 intermediate singularities, which reflects the fact that the sum of all the